Hey everybody, welcome back. So I just wanted to do a little video. I haven't done a video in a while. I just, like when I trade, and I've been trading for 40 years now, there's, I watch the markets every day. Sometimes I watch them on 1 minute charts, and, I can see things that, on the small scale that a lot of other people can't see. And you know, when I have a backdrop of experience that I can pull from for 40 years, I it's really disturbing to me because there's so many people that just don't understand the bigger picture, and it leads to mass hysteria, which causes craziness and distorts reality. And there was an article today in Bloomberg that really kind of, I guess, it just kind of, I don't even know how to say it. It's really, really, really annoying to me because, I can see some things that other people can't see, but, sometimes when the mass hysteria stays so mass for so long, nothing happens, right? And in trading, we get paid to be ahead of the curve. But, sometimes when that curve is so far distorted, um, you get crazy. So, anyways, without further ado, let me just jump into what I'm talking about. So, kind of three things came together today that made me want to do this video. So, I was reading one of, on Twitter, let me just go here quickly. On Twitter, Tracy, I can't remember what her name is. What is Trump saying now? You guy's such a bozo. Tracy, I follow this girl, her name, and more. Trump tweeting away this morning about fake news, woe is me. Tracy Alloway, she put up an interesting thing that I thought was quote. She says, "I find it really interesting that the U.S. is talking about MMT and ballooning its deficit. China remains obsessed with a fiscal deficit to GDP ratio of 3%. Now, one of the things I said here, I said that is because China is 3,000 years old and the U.S. is 300 years old. It's called wisdom. Okay? Now, everybody and their sister is on board with hide that. Like it's okay. Like it's perfectly fine. There's no problem with ballooning the debt ratios. We've done it for a long time. And if I show you what the debt ratio looks like, and here's a good graph of what the federal debt looks like, I just want you to notice the steepening of that curve since 2000, actually since 2009, right? I mean, like, see how flat it was, right? And then the curve goes here, and then notice how it's steepening. I mean, the angle of ascent is crazy. If this is parabolic, right? Now, somewhere along the way, usually 2009, we all fell in love with this idea that debt was fine. Okay, everything was fine. We're going to lower interest rates. Let's let's have not only the country print money, but let's allow every business inside the country to print money free willy. It doesn't matter. This is perfectly normal, right? Everybody's telling you this is perfectly normal. It's not. Okay? Now, let me just expand here. So, recently, Jerome Powell has come out. When he first took office, he came out and he said that, I'm going to be the Federal Reserve Chairman that normalizes interest rates and that brings the market back to some sense of reality. Okay, and everybody loved that about him, and that was all fine and dandy. And we saw the market have a correction that it should have had. It should have had that normal, healthy correction, and the market came down. We just look here quickly. Market came down. If I go back to the SPY, we saw the market have that correction, and this was it. This was when the Fed was going to be normal, and interest rates were going to go to a level that was acceptable. We went from 290 down to 235, which was super, super, super healthy. Okay, everybody think that's bad. But that's really, really healthy for everything and everybody. Sometimes I like to think of, if you can think of the market sometimes like a forest, meaning that you have trees that grow in the forest, and they're all clamoring for sunlight, and those companies are the sunlight is consumers' money, customers' money, and when the trees get too big and the canopy is too thick, you can't get growth from smaller trees, right? So when markets correct and put larger corporations into pain and suffering, that's a good thing because it makes the economy very competitive. When these large corporations have all the money and they are not worried about the money whatsoever, not worried about their consumer, they become complacent, they become lazy, and the consumer is the one that ultimately suffers because we don't get high quality products that competition makes, and that is what we want. Competition is good, okay? But when you can't have competition because there's too many big fat trees in that forest that are sucking up all the sunlight, which are consumer dollars, you can't get it, okay? So you want markets to crash, okay? I know it's painful, but it's a good thing in the long run, because in the long run, it allows those smaller trees on the canopy floor to, if you let the big trees burn down, smaller trees will grow, the economy will become stronger, and that has what has made America great for the last 300 years, that ability for the free markets to take place. So, why am I ranting? Blah, 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 let's go. Okay, so Jerome Powell recently came out and was very, very dovish. Now, right after that, I saw a story on the Bank of Japan's never-ending crisis is a lesson to the world's central banks. Now, the Bank of Japan, if you don't know this, decades ago, okay, they were really the first ones, at least in my lifetime, to introduce quantitative easing. Or what they did was when their real estate market, Japan was like booming. Their auto industry was massive. They had their computer industry, their technology industry was really strong. And they were booming, and their housing market got way out of control. They had a massive correction, just like the U.S. did in 2009. And next thing you know, they were the first ones to put interest rates down to zero. As a matter of fact, I think they went negative interest rates. My memory is not what it should be. But it was decades ago. Now, since then, Japan has never really fully recovered. Never has Japan really fully recovered. If you take a look at Japanese GDP growth, look at this trajectory since it happened. Just straight down. Okay? So, why are we drinking this Kool-Aid that we're going to, somehow it's going to be different if the U.S. does the same thing? Okay? I mean, this trajectory is straight down, right? I mean, 2.3% annual change. I mean, look at India, 6%, right? I mean, it's just not going to work, okay? And to top it all off, you have this massive ballooning debt that is on top of no GDP growth, no real GDP growth. Like, how do we get out of this, right? I mean, we're just going to be stuck printing money to eternity. I mean, like, eventually something's going to happen, okay? If you don't know, I hope my good friend Seth Golden is watching this because, he's always a proponent of what is normal, what's not normal. And, Like, nothing against Seth. He's a really smart guy, but he doesn't understand the significance of black swans. And if you don't know what a black swan is, I highly recommend you pick up Nassim Taleb's book, um, Black Swans, right? I think his book's called Nassim Taleb's Black Swan. But anyways, what is a black swan? A black swan is some event, in most situations, it's a geopolitical event that occurs that causes or triggers the an underlying problem such as massive federal debt and stagnant GDP growth to implode on itself. Okay? And everybody in the U.S. is like, oh, it will never happen. Like, what really annoys me is how young the U.S. is. I mean, like, if you really think about it, the U.S. markets really, even though the U.S. is 300 years old, the U.S. markets really, in the first 100 years, they were really nothing to speak of. So we can say pretty safely that the U.S. stock market is really, maybe 150 years old. And the electronic markets are really, maybe 30 years old, if that, right? I mean, think about that, guys. That's 2 lifetimes. Yet we talk in the U.S. like, it's impossible. History has shown this and history has shown that. We're infants, okay? We're just infants in terms of time. Again, going back to China, which has been around for 3,000 years. Now, markets haven't been around, but they do understand, that there have been markets for 3,000 years, right? So, but not stock exchanges. So, anyways, we get back to the whole thing that I'm talking about, this whole article. Japan's never-ending crisis is a lesson to the world's central banks. And nobody's paying attention. Nobody's paying attention. Deficits continue to bubble. Everybody keeps drinking the Kool-Aid. Markets approaching in on massive new highs, and everything is fine. New competition is slowing in the United States because there's never been a real correction for 11 years or 10 years now. All these big fat companies that are basically in the forest that are sucking up all that sunlight. New companies can't sprout. It's causing civil disruption inside the country as the poor get poorer and the rich get richer. Okay? What's the answer? Let markets be free. Get the Federal Reserves out of the free markets. Remember, the more government control you allow inside a market, the more socialist you become. The world wants answers. And the answers are, let the fat cats burn to death. Let's have a big fire. Let's burn down this bitch. And let the new companies take root. We won't die, folks. Okay, we've recovered from every crash in history. We won't die. It'll be a good thing. You'll see. The markets, if the S&P were to drop to like 100, that would be so healthy for everything and everybody. Because we're all big, fat, complacent, lazy pigs right now. That's what we are. Because we don't have to work hard anymore to get market share. That's what it all boils down to. Okay? Do not fear corrections. Get the Federal Reserve out of the markets. Let's let what we were built on. What is democracy built on? What is capitalism built on? Capitalism is built on the fact that the strongest, most adaptable, quickest companies thrive. The ones that provide you with the best business, right? And right now, all the large companies are just lazy and complacent because they can be. Let's make them not be. You really want to solve the world's problems? Stop with this massive debt buildup. It's causing the separation between the rich and the poor. Let's burn down. Now, listen, I don't want to burn down rich people, but let's burn down the companies that are fat and lazy. Okay? Let's let them wash out. Let the market go to where the market should go, and let's see who the survivors are. Those are the ones that deserve to be there, and those are the ones that are fighting and working for your business. I don't know about you, but when companies take me as a consumer for granted, and I can't get value for my money anymore, it's not a good world. And to top it all off, there's massive debt that's occurring. Like, this can't end well, right? And everybody keeps saying, well, it's perfectly fine, Steve. It's been going on since 2009. Well, it's been a hell of a 10 years for me. Because, I can't ignore the reality. I'm not an idiot. I know what history has proven. I've seen what happened to Japan, stagnating growth, right? It doesn't take a rocket scientist to know that when the debt gets too high, it's not a good thing. But yet everybody drinks the Kool-Aid. Okay, I've done my little rant. I know it's not going to change anything, but you know what? I got a small voice, so I'm going to let my voice be heard. For now, buy that dip. That's what is still working. And I'm not saying, don't buy the dip, because buy the dip has been working, and it's going to continue to work until the world wises up and everybody realizes that we ain't going anywhere. Japan hasn't gone anywhere for decades, and neither will the United States if they continue on this path. Thank you. Bye for now.